Happy Wednesday. Welcome into Send It In, presented by BetMGM here on the BetQL network. I'm your host, PJ Glasser. Great show for you guys today as we continue previewing Wild Card Weekend. We got Sean Pendergast joining us here in a little bit, break down the Texans and Chargers matchup. Also, we'll dive into the other two matchups in the AFC. We'll look at Ravens, Steelers, and Broncos, Bills as well. We'll look at the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State and Texas. We'll preview that game, give out our best bets, some props that we like in that matchup. Also look at another good day of college basketball. Had a great night last night. We'll give out some more plays in college hoops. Kate Constable going to join us later on in the show for Model Making Money, and then we'll wrap everything up with our favorite plays of the day. As always, any questions, comments, best bets that you guys have for us, let us know. You can go to twitch.tv/BetQL or YouTube, search Odyssey Sports. If you miss any part of the show over the next 30 minutes, we got you covered with the Send It In podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Let's get this show rolling. Glasses in session. We go to the Glasser guest line. Sean Pendergast joins us. Give him a follow on X at Sean T. Pendergast of Payne and Pendergast on Sports Radio, 610 weekdays, 6 to 10 a.m. Central Time. Sean, really appreciate the time, man. Texans, Chargers get things started in Super Wild Card Weekend on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And right now, you know, a lot of people are loving the Chargers. This line is up to a 3-point spread. Just your initial thoughts on the game with the Texans being home underdogs against the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that the Texans are a home underdog to the Chargers at all, given the way both teams closed out the season. The Chargers look like one of the stronger teams in the AFC closing out the season. The offense looks really good for the Chargers right now. They scored more than 34 more points in each of their last 3 games. And the Texans had laid a big egg on Christmas Day on national television against the Baltimore Ravens, and then they got beat by the Chiefs the week before when they had the nation to themselves as well. So the betting community forms a lot of its impressions based on those big games that they see on a national stage. So I'm not surprised about the spread. I am surprised about the amount of maybe disrespect that the Texans are getting from the national media. There's a lot of people that are just writing this team off as, you know, forget about the Super Bowl, that they can't even beat the Chargers at home. So I'm hoping that some of that gets heard and internalized over at NRG Stadium. But I think it's going to be a hell of a game, and I think it's a matchup between two teams that mirror each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, you mentioned it. You know, this was a team coming into the season that I think a lot of people liked. They thought this team was going to take the next step, maybe challenge Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore as some of those teams in the AFC. Injuries have really derailed this team, though, this season. So given everything, you know, with the injuries, the expectations they had at the beginning of the year, they still did win the division. They get a home playoff game. What grade would you give the Texans heading into the postseason?
I would give them a grade on this season of a B- probably. You know, when you win 10 games and you win the division and you clinch the division a month before the season is over, it's hard to give a grade that's anything less than in that B range. But I think where I go to the B- is that the expectations are one thing, but they backslid in some of the biggest ways possible this season, PJ. And that was after an offseason where they made a lot of high-profile moves, most of which have worked out pretty well for the Texans. Danielle Hunter's been excellent. Joe Mixon has been excellent. When he was on the field, Stephon Diggs was really good for this team. And even some of the second-tier moves like Azeez Al-Shire at linebacker and some of the moves like that have worked out pretty well. The problem is that they, A, have not been able to run the football consistently outside of the times that Joe Mixon puts on a cape and gets yards on his own. This is not an offensive line that run blocks very well. And there was a period during the middle of the season, they haven't protected C.J. Stroud that well all year, but there was a period in the middle of the season where with their starting offensive line, the one they left training camp with, they were allowing pressure rates at the 55 to 60% range in games against the Packers and the Colts and the Jets on a Thursday night game. They allowed 8 sacks. So I think and that's led to a backslide by C.J. Stroud this year, which I don't think is all his fault. So I think the quarterback is always going to drive the mood on anything when it comes to a team. And I think the fact that C.J. Stroud showed some dents in the armor this year, I think has the mood of the fan base kind of tamped back a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you know, the injuries have just killed him, Sean. As you know, at receiver, Stephon Diggs was supposed to help Nico Collins. He gets hurt. Tank Dell comes back from injury. He suffers that gruesome injury against KC a couple weeks back. Heading into the playoff game, Sean, for people out there that want to bet this game, want to get involved in player props, outside of Nico Collins, who's the guy that you would look at in this game? Is it Dalton Schultz? Is it Deontay Johnson? John Mechie? Who's the receiver, tight end that you think needs to step up besides Nico Collins?
I think it's Dalton Schultz, and I think, especially for purposes of prop bets and things like that, C.J. Stroud he is a fan of Dalton Schultz. He does have a connection with Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz's numbers have come up a little bit since the beginning. He's been more a part of the offense in the second half, really the last third of the season, than he was the earlier part of the season when his contract was looking like a total bust through the first month and a half of the year. So I think for those purposes, it would be Dalton Schultz. I think for purposes of the Texans offense operating at what for them is optimal efficiency, which is going and getting maybe 23 to 27 points, it should be Deontay Johnson, who they picked up off of waivers from Baltimore. He only had a couple touches in that game against the Titans in Week 18. But if you watch the All-22, he's open quite a bit. Probably should have had a touchdown if CJ's throwing in the ball instead of Davis Mills in the second quarter on a play. So I think Deontay Johnson needs to bring some of what Tank Dell was starting to bring once again before he got hurt in that Chiefs game.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so that should be a fun one on Saturday. I want to talk some college football with you, Sean, because you are a Notre Dame grad. I want to get your thoughts on the Irish here in a little bit. But obviously you're there in the state of Texas. We got a big one in Dallas, the Cotton Bowl with the Longhorns and the Buckeyes. Ohio State right now looks like the team to beat in college football with what they did against Tennessee and Oregon. They look dominant. Texas, though, it feels like all year, Sean, we've kind of been waiting for them to put together a full 60 minutes. It doesn't feel like Quinn Ewers has probably played as well as a lot of us thought he would coming into this season. But what do you think about this matchup? Texas has a great defense. They still have all those weapons on offense. Do you think they can hang with Ohio State? Do you think possibly they could pull off an upset? Or do you like the Buckeyes to keep rolling in this game?
I like the Buckeyes to keep rolling in this one, with the reminder in the back of my head that they did just lose to Michigan like less than, like a month ago or whatever. Like they're not infallible. They've lost a couple times this year. But I thought it was that Arizona State game. I think you saw maybe just some of the some of the weaknesses in that University of Texas defense, and the offense for the Buckeyes is just clicking right now. Ryan Day has internalized whatever the pressure was on for him coming out of that Michigan loss. He has taken it and channeled it the exact right way for his team. They're the favorite to win this whole thing, and they deserve to be the favorite to win this whole thing. I just don't know the Texans or the Texans, that Texas. They got nice weapons. They've certainly got some Golden and the other guys on the outside there. But I just don't think they have enough. If it turns into a track meet, I think Ohio State's going to end up running away with this one in the second half.
What about your Irish, Sean? I mean, as a Notre Dame grad, that was probably the biggest win the Irish have had in 25, 30 years. It's been a long time since they've had a win that big, knocking off Georgia. Now they have to regroup, get ready for another physical game against Penn State down in Miami in the Orange Bowl. You think Notre Dame advances to the championship game, or you think Penn State gets them?
No, I do. I think Notre Dame advances to the championship game, and I think the difference in the game will be Notre Dame's ability to run the football. It sounds like Jeremiah Love is going to play in this game, so you got the two-headed monster of Love and Price in the backfield. The element that Riley Leonard brings to things with his legs, and then I just don't know, like, if they can defensively, if they can just corral Tyler Warren. I don't think and I know Drew Aller he's an NFL prospect. He's a high-level NFL prospect. I just don't know that there's a ton of weaponry on the outside with Penn State that scares Notre Dame. Even with the injuries Notre Dame's had on defense, losing Benjamin Morrison and Riley Mills earlier. They lost Mills a couple weeks ago in that Indiana game. They're just so deep in the mentality and the culture of that program right now, and the physicality that they play with. There may be a different story when they bump up against Ohio State and Texas come championship time, but I think they've got enough to beat Penn State and out-physical Penn State in this game.
It's going to be a heck of a weekend of football. We get Penn State, Notre Dame tomorrow, Ohio State, Texas on Friday, and then the Texans and Chargers on Saturday. Going to be a lot of fun. Thanks to Sean Pendergast for joining us. Make sure you guys give him a follow on X at Sean T. Pendergast. Catch Payne and Pendergast on the morning, 6 to 10 a.m. Central Time, Sports Radio 610, weekdays there in Houston. Sean, always great catching up with you, man. Good luck to your Irish and the Texans this upcoming week. Over the next couple days, we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, it's a big few days for me, PJ. I appreciate the well wishes. Thanks.
No problem, man. Good catching up with you. All right, guys, let's talk some wild card weekend, and we will start with that Chargers and Texans matchup. LA favored by 3. The total in the game, 42.5. Now, I think a lot of people are going to like the Chargers in this game. And right now, looking at a lot of the betting splits, the Chargers are the most popular bet of Wild Card Weekend, which makes sense. The Texans are really struggling down the stretch. They really only have one receiver left in Nico Collins. And these are the kind of teams that the Chargers have beaten all year. When the Chargers are favored in a game, they usually win those games. They're so well coached. Dobbins is back for them running the football. Defense has played well against offenses that are not elite. They usually feast on kind of bottom tier offenses. And with only Nico Collins and Joe Mixon as really the two primary guys that you worry about, would make sense. A lot of people like the Chargers in this game. Here's an insane stat that I came across that applies to this game. And I think there's good reason behind it and why I like the Texans +3. Since 2017, teams that didn't make the playoffs the previous year and are favored in the game, they're 1-14 against the spread since 2017 in Wild Card Weekend, right? So you got a team in the Chargers, didn't make the playoffs last year, yet they're favored in the game. Those teams are 1-14 against the spread in the last 8 years. That is a crazy trend, and it makes sense, right? Team kind of making it to the playoffs after not making it last year. They're favorites, maybe a little overvalued against a team like Houston who's been there. We don't really consider them a contender. Chargers a little overvalued. I think getting the Texans at +3 is a great bet. I think they got a great chance to win this game as well. This game feels very similar to last year's Texans wild card game at home when they played Cleveland and Joe Flacco. Everybody was all over the Browns. They loved the story. They thought the Browns were the better team, and the Texans end up wiping them out. I don't think the Texans are going to blow out the Chargers, but I do think the Chargers are overvalued. I'm not the biggest Justin Herbert guy in the world either. I never trust Herbert when it comes to critical games. If I could have a quarterback to win a game, he wouldn't be as high on my list as a lot of other people. So I'll take the Texans +3 to keep it close. I like Dalton Schultz. I agree with Sean. He's a guy that I would watch. I like his anytime touchdown price, +400. If the Texans find the end zone, it's probably going to be Mixon. It's probably going to be Nico Collins. But after those two, I think Dalton Schultz is the best chance of being that third guy. For his price to be 4-1, I think it's good value. So I like Dalton Schultz anytime touchdown at +400. And then Justin Herbert to throw an interception is even money. Herbert's only had 3 picks the entire season, and yet he's only +100 to throw a pick. That should be like +140, +150 for a guy who's only thrown 3 picks the entire year. Houston's got a very good defense with a good secondary, one of the best corners in the NFL, and Derek Stingley. And if you like the Texans like me, you got to figure they're probably got to force some turnovers. I'll take Houston +3. I'll take Dalton Schultz anytime touchdown and give me Herbert to throw a pick as well at +100. Then we got the Steelers and the Ravens. Baltimore favored by 10. The total is 44 in this game. Look, we've been talking about this game all week, right? And you guys know I like the Steelers plus the points. Just feels like too many people are forgetting that this is still Ravens Steelers at the end of the day. Last 20 times that these teams have met, the underdog is 16-3-1 against the spread. In those last 20 games, only 4 have been decided by more than 7 points. I get that the Ravens are the much better team. I get that probably in the Harbaugh-Tomlin era, the talent discrepancy has never been as big as it is in this game. The teams have never been this far apart. But it's still a divisional game. It's still a rivalry game. This is the 3rd time that these teams are seeing each other. And normally the dog covers in this game. So if you're giving me a 10 when all the pressure is on Baltimore, I'll take the Steelers plus the points. Also, a couple props that I like. It's going to be Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson over rushing attempts. The Ravens did something for the first time when they played 3 weeks ago against the Steelers that they hadn't done in probably the last 4 or 5 years. And that was run the ball a lot. And that's what they need to do again on Saturday. They're calling for high winds, potential snow, cold weather, run the football. That's why you brought in Derrick Henry. That's why you have an historical offense this year, because you have the greatest rushing quarterback of all time and a Hall of Fame quarterback, and nobody can defend the Ravens when they're running the ball. Derrick Henry's rushing attempts is 20.5. I would go over. Lamar's rushing attempts is 8.5. I would go over. Zay Flowers probably not going to play. So what's the excuse for the Ravens not to run the ball in this game? You're without your top wide receiver. Your quarterback's good to go. Your running back's good to go. Lean on them. I'll take both Derrick and Lamar to go over their rushing attempts. And then also give me George Pickens' longest reception over 23.5 yards. If there is one liability on the Ravens defense, especially in their secondary, it is Brandon Stephens. And I promise you the Steelers' game plan is going to be to attack him at will. Kyle Hamilton's playing like an all-pro. Marlon Humphrey's playing like an all-pro. Their first-round pick from this past year, Nate Wiggins, has been excellent. Stephens is the guy to go after. And if Russell Wilson sees a one-on-one with Pickens and Brandon Stephens, he's going to attack that. Pickens is a big play receiver. Will take longest reception over 23.5 yards for George Pickens. Finally, Broncos and Bills. Buffalo favored by 9. The total in this game is 47. I'm leaning towards taking the Bills -9. I think this game's probably going to be a double-digit win for Buffalo. The problem for Denver in this game is the things that they do well, the Bills also do well. Broncos are the best team in the NFL at getting after the quarterback. They had the most sacks during the regular season, while Buffalo gives up the fewest sacks of any team in the NFL. Denver is first in EPA yard per play in the NFL on defense. Buffalo is second offensively in EPA per play. So it's just one of these matchups where the things that Denver does well, Buffalo also does well. Bills are the better team. They're at home. Way more playoff experience on their roster than this Broncos roster. Hasn't been in the playoffs in a decade. I'll take the Bills -9 against the Broncos. That's what we like in the AFC. All right, let's talk some college football now. We got the Cotton Bowl with Ohio State and Texas. Buckeyes favored by 6. I mean, we have been talking about this game all week, a little bit of last week as well. You guys know I like Texas in the game, +6. I think we're overvaluing Ohio State a little bit too much after their first 2 games. I don't think they can continue playing at that level against Tennessee and Oregon, against Texas. If there's a team in the country that can give Ohio State problems, it's Texas. Their secondary is awesome. They have the best corner in college football. And I just love when we get teams like Texas that have been favorites all year and they finally get to play the underdog card. I love betting teams like that. I think Sark and Quinn Ewers are going to have to put on their best performance in the entire season. Sark's going to have a great game plan, and Quinn Ewers is really going to have to execute it. It's going to take all hands on deck in this game. I think Texas can keep it close. I also like the over in this game. If you like Texas to cover, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Ohio State, I think, is going to get their points. I think they're going to get into the 30s. If Texas is going to cover, they got to be able to score too. This has to be like a 31-27, 34-30 kind of game if Texas wants to cover the number. So I like the over 53.5. I like Texas to cover the +6 as well. As for some props that I would look at, Gunnar Helm, the tight end for Texas, we had him against ASU. He scored. I come right back with him at +210. He's the guy in the red zone that Quinn Ewers is looking for. He's the matchup nightmare for defenses when they get in the red area. Gunnar Helm, I like his price at +210. And Emeka Egbuka, I like him as well. Ohio State's got 2 NFL running backs. They got the best receiver in the country in Jeremiah Smith. But we all keep forgetting how great Emeka Egbuka is, and he's a touchdown machine. He scored a touchdown in 9 to 13 games for Ohio State this season, so I will go with him to score a touchdown at +155. And finally, Quinn Ewers over passing yards at 236.5. He had 332 against Arizona State. He had 358 against Georgia. So in 2 of his last 3 games, when everything's been on the line for Texas, Ewers has thrown for a lot of passing yards. I would expect that again on Friday. I think he maybe throws for 300. So look at alternate pass yards for Quinn Ewers. For Texas to stay in this game, they got to score points, and Ewers has to play well. So I'll take over his passing yards. And I'd look at Matthew Golden, the wide receiver for Texas. We took over his receiving yards against Arizona State. It was at like 52.5. Now it's at 64.5. It's still too low. This is their top receiver. This is their big play receiver. He can have a 50-yard reception on any given play. He's got game-breaking speed. He's a great deep threat. Over receiving yards for Matthew Golden. Like him against Ohio State as well. All right, we had a great day in college hoops last night. Let's get out some more plays on the hardwood. B-Mills, dang it, Peej, you were spot on with all of my plays yesterday, especially with you going against my UCLA pick. Have another 3-pack for you today. Arkansas, South Carolina, and Oklahoma. B-Mills got plays in 2 of those games. Nothing for me in Ole Miss and Arkansas tonight. Would probably lean Arkansas, but 3.5 seems a little rich. I think getting it under the 3 like you did with 2.5, that's a good bet. UConn-Villanova is a really fascinating game tonight. You have UConn, number 9 team in the country, going up against unranked Villanova. The Huskies are the number 2 offense in college basketball according to KenPom, and Villanova is number 5. However, both of these defenses are horrendous. UConn, according to Ken Pom, is 131, and Villanova is 180. So you get two teams, elite offenses, awful defenses, and they also play at a very slow pace. UConn out of 365 college basketball teams in D1, they rank 302 in tempo, and Villanova ranks 345. So both of these teams are so efficient because they play at a slower pace and they maximize their opportunities of both teams. I don't think this is as high scoring a game as everybody else does, so I like the under 145.5 in UConn and Villanova. I would lean towards Villanova money line as well because that line stinks anytime you get an unranked team favored over a ranked team. Alabama, South Carolina. B-Mills, you like South Carolina plus the points tonight. I like South Carolina in the first half against Bama at plus 5.5. You guys know I'm a Bama grad, and it feels like every time Bama goes on the road and plays South Carolina, they never play well. They always get off to sluggish starts, and this is kind of the spot in their schedule. They played undefeated Oklahoma on Saturday. They got A&M coming up. They got Kentucky coming up. They got Ole Miss coming up. They got like 3 ranked games coming up, and in between all of that is a road trip to Columbia to go up against probably the worst team in the SEC in South Carolina. Bama has played 3 road games this season. They've been trailing at halftime in 2 of them against Purdue and against North Dakota when they were 25-point favorites in that game. I think they could get off to a little bit of a sluggish start tonight as well. So I'll take South Carolina in the first half, plus 5.5. Give me Miami on the money line against Florida State. FSU's 10-4 this season. Miami's 4-10, yet the Canes are the team that is favored in this one. Miami's had some of the worst shooting luck in college basketball. They are due for some positive shooting in their next couple games. Their offense is too good. I think it could start against a Florida State defense that's not very good. I'll take the Canes at home tonight against FSU. A&M and Oklahoma, top 20 matchup. Sooners looking to bounce back off of that loss for Bama. One of my favorite things to bet in college basketball is when you get 2 ranked teams and the home team is favored in the game. Normally, that's very profitable. Oklahoma is favored in the game in a matchup of 2 ranked teams. I'll back the Sooners minus 3.5 against A&M. And then finally, how about Virginia heading out to Berkeley to play Cal on a Wednesday night because that's what ACC basketball is nowadays. Both of these teams are no good. But I'm looking to fade these teams that have to go East Coast to West Coast in the middle of the week. I think those are going to be good spots all year to fade a lot of these teams. I like Cal tonight to take care of business against Virginia, so we'll take the Golden Bears minus 5.5 against UVA. All right, let's go to Model Making Money now. Check in with Kate Constable. Get some best bets for today and also for the weekend in college football and the NFL. But Kate, what is the BetQL model like as some of their 5-star plays for tonight?
Hey, PJ. Yeah, BetQL model. We're going to go to an AFC wildcard game. It likes the Broncos. Getting 8.5 in Buffalo against the Bills. The Bills 5-2 against the spread at home this year. The Broncos, though, 5-3 against the spread on the road this year. So both of those trends kind of negate the other one. Our model makes this Broncos plus 3.5. So you're getting like 5 points of difference from the current line or 5 points of value from the current line here. So the model loves Broncos plus 8.5.
All right, there you go. Model thinks Denver can keep it close against Buffalo. Kate, what about in college football? I want to get your thoughts on some of the NFL games. But let's talk about some of these college games. We got the Orange Bowl tomorrow night between Penn State and Notre Dame. Tough game to handicap. Notre Dame 1.5-point favorite, low total 45.5. Anything that you like?
Yeah, I like Notre Dame in this one. I would take them on the money line. I don't have like a terribly strong handicap as to why. That's more of a gut feel for me is Notre Dame to win. But what I do like in terms of like what I've done research wise and really dug into is the under in this one. Notre Dame's passing game, we've seen it. It's not great. I mean, it's not terrible, but not all that special. So they're going to lean on the run a ton. I know Jeremiah Love's status a little unknown. It sounds like he's going to play. They're either going to lean on him a ton like they usually do, or if he's not as effective, they're going to have to go to other players. And how effective are those players going to be, especially stepping up in this big game moment and against Penn State's run defense that showed that it can slow down the best of the best. Shut down Ashton Genty in that quarterfinal game. And then on offense for Penn State, you have Nick Singleton, you have Katron Allen, that double-headed monster. They'll be relied upon a ton. And as long as this ball is kept on the ground, I mean, you're going to see a whole lot of clock management. You're going to see fewer possessions. You're going to see that clock keep going. So I like the under. Plus, both these teams are so physical that the under in this game is my favorite play.
All right, very good. Kate, what about in our other semifinal between Ohio State and Texas? Should be a good one. Any plays that you like there?
Yeah, Ohio State has been so dominant this postseason, and it does feel like they're a little bit of a team of destiny after losing to Michigan, and then going on to put together two of their top performances of the entire season these last two games. But in betting a lot, what we do is try and find spots where you sell high, buy low. And this kind of feels like a sell high spot a little bit on Ohio State. Now, that makes me nervous just because Texas has not put together complete performances throughout the season. I mean, whether it's a quarter that they take off or even a 3 to 4 minute period, games can flip on a dime, and that's what's happened to Texas in a couple of these these previous matchups here. So as long as Texas comes to put 4 quarters together, I think that they can stick within this number, especially this being a little bit of a sell high spot on Ohio State. So I will take the Longhorns plus the points, but I do think Ohio State ends up winning this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Texas can give them a game as well. Kate, what about in the NFL? We got 6 games to choose from. We know the model likes Denver to keep it close with Buffalo. What about you? Any games that you like for Super Wildcard Weekend?
Yeah, PJ, I'm going to go with the player prop. I'm going to go Derrick Henry longest rush over 18.5 yards. He's gone over this number in 8 of his last 10 games in the 2 matchups against the Steelers earlier this season. A 31-yard run, a 44-yard run. And, I mean, what happened to the Ravens last year in the postseason? Kind of abandoned the run, right? So, let's not make that mistake again. I think Derrick Henry's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. And this is on the lower end of where his prop has sat throughout the season. It's gotten as high, I believe, as 22.5 at some point. So, getting it at 18.5 for his longest rush, I think that is a very fair number. And for someone who's going to have the ball in his hands as much as Derrick Henry is, I like Henry to go over that longest rush of 18.5.
I like it. Yeah, Kate, if they abandon the run again, we might see Derrick Henry strangle John Harbaugh on the sidelines. Or a bunch of Ravens fans might do that too. So we'll see what happens. Kate Constable joining us here on Send It In. Great stuff as always. Kate, appreciate the time. Enjoy all the football this weekend. We'll catch you up again soon.
You too, PJ. Sounds good.
All right, awesome. For those people who want to continue to bet, don't have the time to research each individual game, you need to download the BetQL app. Ranks each game on a 1 to 5 star scale based on its unbeatable analysis from spreads and over-unders to player props. Stay up to date and bet confidently with BetQL's help. And we got a promo from our friends at BetMGM. Do you guys think that you know playoff football? Well, you can prove it in BetMGM's free-to-play game. For each round of the big game playoffs, you have the opportunity to answer 3 historical playoff football questions. If you answer all 3 questions correctly, you win a share of $1 million in bonus bets. The first entry period, 3 questions about wild card games, $250,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. Second entry period, 3 questions about divisional games, $250,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. And the third entry period, 3 questions about conference championship games, $500,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. How does it work? You access the $1 million playoff football challenge promotion at BetMGM.com or the BetMGM app. Answer 3 questions per round during the big game playoffs. If you answer all 3 questions correctly, you win a share of bonus bets for that playoff round. All right, let's wrap the show. PJ's plays here on Send It In. Had a great day yesterday. Mississippi State, Vandy under. Cash it. Dog of the day. Georgia, cash it. Let's have another winning day. We'll start with my prop lock. This is going to be for Bills and Broncos on Sunday. Bo Nix over 23.5 rushing yards against Buffalo. Bo has gone over this number in his last 4 regular season games. Probably going to be a negative game script with Denver trailing against Buffalo, and Bo's going to drop back a lot. He's going to take off and scramble. I like this number. Feels like it should be closer to 30. We'll go over 23.5 rushing yards for Bo Nix. Dog of the day is going to be South Carolina in the first half, plus 5.5 against Bama. I think Bama comes out a little sluggish. Anytime these SEC teams go on the road, it's going to be tough because of how difficult that league is this season. I think the Gamecocks can keep it close within the first 20 minutes. We'll take SC plus 5.5. And then my best bet, give me Miami on the money line, minus 125 against FSU. 10-4 Florida State against 4-10 Miami. And the Canes are the team that's favored. Bet numbers and not teams, folks. That's how we do it here on Send It In. Those are our plays for today. Bo Nix over rushing yards is our prop block. South Carolina first half, our dog of the day. Miami money line against Florida State. Thanks again to Sean and Kate for joining us today on Send It In. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We will see you tomorrow.